You mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we're going to talk a little bit about social and community inclusion. So we're a community that's proud of its diversity and our tradition of inclusion. But how do you see these issues and where can we improve?
Sometimes diversity and inclusion can just be talk. So it is difficult to say that somebody doesn't mean it, because you don't always know what's in someone's heart or what their intent is. But the way to make sure that inclusion actually works and that we solve problems rather than just cover them over is to do programming which sometimes asks people to interact and to think deeply about why they are doing things. In one group that I worked with, one of the first things we did to try and change people's perceptions was to do a computer-based evaluation of people's thoughts on race-based activities. And that way you sat in front of a laptop or a PC on a table, and just you and the keyboard knew how you felt about certain things. Then everything went up on the screen so people could see what your opinions on all these factors were: intermarriage among different races, education, co-educational activity, everything from secular related religion issues to race issues to gender issues, sexual preference issues, and you'd be surprised about how people would answer when they didn't think anybody could tell how they answered. There were some pretty offensive responses that flew up on the screen. So the next step after we did that was to place people, because we couldn't tell who'd made those responses unless we were really diabolical and capable of doing the going into the computer system and dividing things up. And since there was no seating chart, that would be more difficult. But the next step was to put people who didn't interact on a regular basis with other people who were from different socioeconomic backgrounds, from different educational backgrounds, and had different workplace scenarios. So we'd sit a corporate executive next to somebody from a neighborhood nonprofit, those kinds of things, and see how they interacted and what their body language was and how they felt about interacting with each other. And then have them write little notes about what they learned after an afternoon of that type of interaction. And then thirdly, one of the things that we surmised over time was that music is a way for people to interact. Sometimes the music makes them forget about the differences because they remember, especially those of us who are over 40, about where they were when they heard a song the first time, or their immediate reaction to it after not hearing it for a while. And so then you see these people who had nothing in common go, oh my God, I was in college and that was just like the bomb song. So then later, after a week or two, we had them give an opinion of spending these 2 days together doing these various activities and what they learned about their traditional thoughts about things, and did they have any new thoughts. So those are some of the kinds of things you can do, but we have to have programming that encourages people from different sectors of our community to engage in those ways, not every year, but occasionally, so we think about these things, and for people to reach into other communities. One of the best places to do those kinds of things is the school system, because was it South Pacific? I love that movie. You have to be taught. You do have to be taught. You do have to educate your children to believe that everybody is just as smart. There might be some people smarter than you, but you might have other talents that those people don't have. And so not to be embarrassed if your IQ isn't the same as this person, or they get math sooner than you do. Just keep plugging away at it. And those kinds, that's something we can reach into the school system and do. We can financially support those kinds of endeavors. And I think it's important for us to look at things that way.
Okay. And last but not least, it's me. My name's Robin Coslin, and I live on Wood Road, and I've lived here a long time. Environmental sustainability is a critical need and a 21st century priority. Increasingly, green initiatives are not only fundamental, but promise to create excitement and generate economic development for individuals and communities. What role should city government have in fostering environmental sustainability and eco-friendly lifestyles?
We probably need to take a look at our building code and zoning code and find ways to give points to people, so we encourage them to allow for expanded activities in sustainability and use of green materials. When I first got into the business of community and economic development finance, the state was just changing its building code to accommodate historic preservation on a regular basis. And so they looked at ways, because our historic properties, the stairways are have a steeper pitch, and the hallways are narrower, and sometimes the ceilings aren't as high as the current basic building code requirements are. So you look at how you do things in a different way to meet the needs of people. So what we need to do with our building code now is take a look at making compromises on what meets the needs of the community and what will protect it in a safe and secure manner, and encourage those kinds of things by putting money aside to give grants, because one of the key factors in doing prohibitions in doing a lot of green and sustainable activities is that up front they cost more than some of our traditional building methodologies. But over time they save more money because of the conservation of utilities, sometimes the strength of the materials lasting longer. So those are that's an educational process for some folks. So there is an educational process, there's a rewriting of some of our codes, there is the need to do supportive financing for those mechanisms, because they are primarily part of housing and the commercial redevelopment activities.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
It's been wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you for inviting me. If there's anything else I could answer, I'd be happy to do that. I also brought some of my palm cards. So